gonna need a bigger boat.
In last week's video, we discussed A Cinema of Motion with 2008's Speed Racer by the Wachowskis. But this week, let's take it back to the infancy of the summer Hollywood blockbuster and talk about a genre we really haven't talked that much about on the channel before: horror. Since the dawn of the motion picture, audiences have been drawn to and frightened by the spectacles of horror in motion pictures and all the forms it has taken. Whether it be slasher, body, psychological, folk, found, or monster, or all the other genres of horror that exists within the mainstream horror culture, we gravitate towards the depiction of terror that sends chills down our spine and scares us for fun. And although scary images have graced our screens across the history of the genre and are iconic in their own right, an aspect of horror that is not always talked about is what is not seen. I mean, think about it. As much as a scary horror image keeps us up at night, what we can't see is a different type of horror. It preys upon our fear of what lurks in the dark and goes bump in the night. It's psychological, instinctual, and if done correctly, masterful. And that of course takes us to the year 1975, with the release of Steven Spielberg's Jaws. I know Jaws isn't always the first film that comes to people's minds when discussing the genre of horror, but many of the conventions of horror are used in the film, but most importantly, the art of not showing and abstaining from showing the horror, proving what you cannot see builds just as much tension as what you can, making Jaws not just a good horror film, but a true cinema of suspense. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Screenplay or Bust, your one-stop shop for all things movies, and stick around today as we dive a little deeper into Jaws and talk about where Spielberg and Jaws pull back from showing conventional scenes of horror, why it's so effective in generating an environment of suspense and primal fear, and how that suspense wasn't just on screen, but behind the scenes, and jeopardized the production of the film itself. From the very beginning of the film, Spielberg bathes the audience in the signature suspenseful horror present throughout the film. For example, take a look at the beginning scene of the film. The female swimmer goes out into the ocean alone at night, which I really would not recommend, and shortly after, the shark attacks. But notice how the shark is not shown. We, the audience, are given the context clues as to what is happening through the actor's performance and by John Williams' brilliant score. We're not worthy! We're not worthy! She flails about and screams for help as she is dragged from side to side across the ocean. She then dips back into the ocean, never to be seen again. And yet we don't see a thing. No gore, no monster in the night, just a scenario that still makes us afraid to go into the water. Chilling. If we fast forward to the shark hunt and after the Indianapolis monologue, the shark begins to attempt to flood and sink the boat, the orca. All we see as the audience is the tracker pop up and the sideboards of the orca breaking under the sheer force of the animal's might and the sound of knocking and wood cracking. Again, we are left to our imagination alone to fill in the blanks. Lastly, the use of barrels by Quentin Hooper to try to surface the shark also adheres to the concept of hiding the monstrous antagonist of the film. We see the barrels bob up and trail throughout the water around the orca. Although we cannot see what lies beneath, the barrels signify the threat below, and where that danger is in relation to our protagonists. Now that we can see where the film uses this hidden horror method, we can delve into why exactly these scenes evoke such a sense of suspense and horror. And it's primarily because of the script and our reaction as the audience amplify all of the shots in the movie. All throughout the film, we are told through the logical marine biologist, Hooper, that the shark is a perfect killing machine. It has no reasoning, no remorse, it is as it was always intended to be. And Brody, Hooper, and Quint are left to deal with the consequences. Even in the first scene, even before we know the stakes at play, a primal fear exists within the scene. A fear of what lies beneath the water, even though we can't see it. But why does that contribute to Jaws' entry into suspense? It's night. We know from the score and Spielberg's suggestive shots from the perspective of the shark that something is about to go down. That suspense builds and the shark attacks, dragging her across the water. Moreover, there is a brief moment where the attack stops and we as the audience are left in a short suspended suspense where a chance exists the swimmer might survive. Of course, that by fate is not the case and she is pulled into the water, therefore relieving the suspense that was built throughout the entire scene by not showing the shark and preying upon the primal fear of the situation. Moving forward to the second analysis scene, the audience is now privy to Hooper's speech on the nature of sharks, and more kills by the shark have already occurred, and that drops us into the shark hunting scene. The three protagonists are sitting in the cabin of the orca, where we start to learn about their respective backstories. It seems as if the coast is clear. No suspense here, and then one of the barrels pops up. The shark is near. Cue suspense. A more logical fear now exists in this scene. Why does the suspense build? We now know the shark is this perfect killing machine, unswayed by the pursuits of man. The suspense builds. What's gonna happen? Will the shark act on its nature? Yes, but we still can't see it. It's breaking down the sides of the boat to sink it and make a meal out of the protagonists. We're given the stakes, dropped into the situation with its non-visual horror, and our collective imagination does the rest. We know the violent, horrific, tireless nature of the shark. We can't see it. We don't know what's going to happen. The perfect environment for suspense. In the third scene, another perfect example of suspense can be seen. The shark is shot with more and more barrels to bring it to the surface and to be killed. And yet, barrel after barrel, it does not emerge from the water.
Hook me up another barrel!
Brought up from the buoyancy of the floating yellow barrels. I feel like I've said barrels a lot.
Correct!
Anywho, the shark is not shown. It is not brought up to the surface, despite the method working on other sharks, as we are told by Quint. However, this shark is a horror, an often majorly unseen horror, a force of nature not to be reckoned with. When hunting the shark, convention is thrown out the window, and in its place, suspense comes in. We once again cannot see the finned antagonistic force, but we know it's defying the expectations of our protagonists, allowing us to see a very present visual fear on their collective faces. They don't know what's going to happen. The audience can only dream of what's going to happen, and that is why this scene participates in the film's larger standing as a cinema of suspense. It's no secret to anyone who loves movies or Jaws that the film had a somewhat troubled production, over budget, over its shooting days, and a young Steven Spielberg over his head. The suspense present within the film was generated by the suspense that loomed over the production of the movie itself. Shooting on the open sea proved to be terribly difficult, not only because of the technical challenges, but also because of the animatronic sharks malfunctioning constantly in the salt water. This in turn resulted in segments where the shark had been planned to be used being scrapped entirely. This ended up inflating the time the cast and crew spent in Martha's Vineyard, and in consequence inflated the budget of the movie, putting Spielberg into shark-infested waters as an over-budget, novice director who had yet to become the Hollywood legend he is today. As Spielberg states in the new 50th anniversary documentary of Jaws, the production issues created an environment of suspense and stress on whether the movie would actually get finished, and that real-life suspense fed into and shaped the suspense present in the completed motion picture. But that's the magic of Jaws, making opportunity out of potentially movie-ending technical problems. Because the shark couldn't be used due to its malfunctioning mechanisms, Spielberg and the crew helped reshape Jaws into a juggernaut of non-visual horror, and a movie predicated on its ability to build and release suspense. Simply put, without the real-life suspense on the set of Jaws caused by the mechanical failures and the technical difficulties, the cinematic language of non-visual, suggestive horror would have never been born out of necessity. And from that birth came the tension and unease, and allows the audience to make a horror of their own making as they use their imagination to fill in the blanks for the scenes where the shark is not explicitly shown. And with bated breath, Jaws is transformed and becomes a true cinema of suspense. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to turn on notifications. It really helps out the channel. And comment down below, do you agree with Jaws' status as a cinema of suspense? Perhaps a different scene comes to mind when thinking of Jaws' suspenseful nature. Comment down below and tell me. And remember, in a world of ever-changing entertainment, Jaws reminds us that there's no shame in returning to the classics for a good dose of artful horror. It proves that in movies, plans change, but only with a good story and a director that stokes out its best qualities can a film become timeless. And if that's the case, it's screenplay or bust. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I'll see you next week.